encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. This is the podcast on which we discuss all things preaching and ministry. My name is Robert Hatfield, and we want to welcome you into this episode in season number 20 of our happy little podcast. Today, we find ourselves once again at Polishing the Pulpit 2024 in Sevierville, Tennessee. We're coming to you from the exhibit hall floor here. You may hear a low roar of people in the background. It's a little quieter right now because the kids' classes aren't going on. So that's always a plus. But if you hear some stuff, yeah, you'll know why. I am very excited to be joined once again by Dean Thompson, who worships and serves the University Church of Christ in the Charlotte, North Carolina. You're right there in Charlotte.
That's right.
How you doing today? Welcome back.
Man, I heard Brother Grider say earlier,
yes,
if I was even happier, there would be two of me, and I love that. I was like, I'm gonna use that. So
okay,
I'm great,
good.
man. We're at Polishing the Pulpit, Tennessee edition.
Tennessee, that's right. Yeah, we've had two.
Yeah.
I feel like my life it's like Groundhog Day. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, man, it's great. I guess they said it's twice as nice, right? So,
yeah.
But it's great. I've seen so many great brothers and sisters and just the fellowship. So if you haven't been yet, you need to get to Polishing the Pulpit, either
That's right.
in Branson or Sevierville next year. Please make your plans. Preachers, tell your elders, I need this time.
That's right. Yeah.
Don't
tell your elders they need this time too.
Yes.
They needed to.
A lot for just everyone, preachers, elders, the average everyday Christian. Just, there's so much for the kids. I'm this is not a paid ad, so
yeah, that's right.
But we just love it at PTP, and even just to rub elbows with you, man.
I know.
Appreciate this.
What's fun, and I've said this before, I say it like every episode we record from here, and I know people are like, oh, quit saying that all the time. But it's nice not to have to be virtual. Like we can sit beside each other, we can interact with each other. I don't have to worry about your connection being lost.
I know.
Technical difficulties. It's just a fun time.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Yeah. I don't know how much you appreciate sitting beside me. I don't look as good as Dan Winkler, but
okay, we're gonna have to talk more off the air about that. I can't have any more incriminating evidence with Dan, so I better just leave that there.
I was sitting in front of him, my wife and we were sitting in front of him yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was like, who is this guy with this beard? I said, wait a minute, that is Dan. He's just sitting there all casual.
Yeah, he does
with
that.
a T-shirt and just like sitting in the back with Kyle Butts, listening to Kyle Butts session. I was like, wow, this is, you would just thought he was just any other chill. I love it. He's just taking it all in like everybody else.
Just taking it in.
It's great.
That's right. He's a good one.
Happy to be here, though.
Well, thank you for coming. We're talking today about writing and how preachers can improve their writing. We're going to get a little bit into some of the modern technologies and things like that, artificial intelligence, blah, blah, blah. Tell us why this is something you're passionate about.
I appreciate this topic so much, and let me be the first to say that I am no expert at all. I am still growing in this discipline and will continue to grow until the day that I die. There is this saying that the day you stop growing is the day you stop learning is the day you die. The day you stop growing is the day you die, rather. We're still growing here, but I think this is so vital as a preacher to improve their writing. Because we need to be doing our best when it comes to a writing, and whether it's a sermon, whether it's a bulletin article, whether it's a Bible study track that we're trying. We need to put our best foot forward, and so I'm going to be giving some tips on how to do that. Yeah. But writing, has quote unquote been in my DNA for a long time.
Yeah.
I love to write. My parents growing up, every summer they would force my brother and I to go to the library and read books. My dad specifically was like, you are not going to sit on your butt and play video games all summer. You're going to go to the library. You're going to check out some books. And so my passion for writing came out of my love for reading.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And so, starting out with just the Three Bears and then going to the
classic.
Harry Potter books and all, growing to that. And so, it just grew out of my love for reading, and I just love how you have different writers who are able to just make words jump off the page, if you will, right? And so we can translate that to our writing in sermon prep, and also when it comes to bulletin articles and things like that. How can we be better writers for the kingdom and help people better appreciate God's words with the words that we convey? And so I think that's why this topic is so vital just for today, and as we strive to grow in Him.
Yeah, that sounds good. When you write sermons, are you a manuscript guy, an outline guy? We may have talked about this before.
Yeah, so I used to be strictly outlines.
Okay.
But the more I've grown, I've turned more into manuscript.
You've put away childish things. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Well, to each his own, right?
Yes,
but
that's
for me, it's much better. I mean, like I said, I like to write, right? And so I love to write out my thoughts. And if I don't write it out, Robert, I'm going to forget it. I'm going to forget it. And so you ever get to a point, I know some preachers, none of y'all are like this, right? But you ever get to a point after the sermon and you're like, I forgot to communicate that very important point.
Yes.
I left that out.
Yeah.
Right. And so I need to write it down, write it out. And so, and even in my manuscript or outline or what have you, I bold it, I put it in red so that I do not forget it.
Okay.
Yeah. My sermon might be, anywhere between 7 to 8 pages long for a Sunday morning. And I've timed it out to where, I know exactly how long I'm going to go every morning. Give or take, because, I go over it, several times before the Sunday morning. So,
what kind of word count are you finding for that?
I don't look
just
at
7 to 8
count.
pages.
It's crazy how it works out. It just normally comes out between 7 to 8, and I've found that if it's around 7 to 8 pages, I'm normally between 25 to 30 minutes with my Sunday morning lesson. And that's where I want to stick around. I found that anything over 40 minutes, and I don't mean to come at anybody, so do not come at me. But I found anything above 40 minutes, unless it's something that's really, really engaging, people kind of get turned off.
I agree.
And they're looking down on their phones.
Yeah. Well, somebody said, how long should a preacher preach? And the answer was, as long as the congregation will let him. Because really, that's right. I mean, we need to know our audience, and exactly. I think certain younger attention spans are a little shorter than older people's attention spans, but older people don't need to sit in one spot for that long. Maybe they got medicines to take, or maybe they need to visit the facilities. There are all sorts of things that we need to keep in mind, and there's a fine line between a sermon and a hostage situation.
Yes.
So we need to kind of keep that in mind as we go.
I cannot tell you. I know this is not a topic on how long one should preach.
Yes.
But I cannot tell you how many times I have sat after a lesson that I've heard from someone else. We might be visiting other places, my family and I look at my wife, I'm like, he tried to hold us hostage today.
This is still going.
He tried to hold us hostage. I'm like, you could have said that in much fewer words. And this is why it's so important to be a good writer, because some of the things that we communicate, if we write them out elegantly and things like that, they will come off very well. Much better if we're just shooting from the hip, if you will.
Good point. So we're going to fold in as we go some things about artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Tell me how, what's on your mind as we get started here?
So I'm a big data guy. You know, I like to say lead where the data takes you. And there's a story behind the data. You know, so I like to look at information from Barna from time to time. Barna Group, if you all out there don't know what the Barna Group is, you know, they are a group that does a lot of collection around religious questions and things like that. So one of the questions that was posed, I looked this up. They had an article about the AI's influence in religion.
Okay.
And so they said that over 3 in 5 U.S. adults who identify as Christian, religious, or attend church say they have concerns about the ethical implications of AI technologies from a religious perspective. And they also feel this way about using AI for writing sermons. Listen to this. They say 63% say a human could do this task better, while 21% think AI or a human would do it at a same level, right? So you have some people who think that when it comes to sermon writing, AI could do it better or at the same level than a human could. Right, and so
they're still in the minority.
Yes,
fortunately,
they are in the minority. Yes, but we're seeing, and I've said this before to several people. Like AI is here to stay. And we're seeing people, you know, have a shift in their thinking. Like, well, you know, maybe it's not so bad. It can help people when it comes to writing the entire sermon. We're going to talk about how that should not be.
Yes.
How to not, you know, use AI as a crutch. But I think that with the advent of this technology, we have to understand how to use it for good. And we can do it in our ministries, especially when it comes to writing sermons or writing articles or writing tracts or things like that. And so we want to talk through some of those things too today.
Yeah, sounds good. Overarching principles, you know, obviously we want to be ethically upright. You know, we want to be people who are following the example of Jesus, you know, things like that. So, as we go through talking about some of this, we'll want to exemplify Christ as much as we possibly can. You've got, 9 things
9 tips
for us to consider that will help us to improve our writing in an AI world.
Yes. Okay. Yes, 9 tips. And some of these tips may not come as a surprise to you all. You know, a lot of you have been in the ministry for a long time, and we so appreciate your work. I love preachers, and I love the work that preachers put into their sermon prep, put into their ministry, and so these are just some things to help us be more well-rounded as we strive to serve whatever capacity for the kingdom. So number 1 is to develop a plan. And when I say develop a plan, I'm talking about what does our sermon plan look like from maybe month to month, quarterly, biannually, yearly. You know, there are some preachers out there, David Farr, who do theirs yearly, right? And
I'm one of these. I do this,
and I love it, right? So you develop the plan, it's because a lot of us, all of us, I take that back. All of us need to have a pulse on what our congregation needs.
Yes.
You know, if you're not speaking to the congregation's needs, you might as well go be preaching at the wall and watch paint dry, you know, because you're not being relevant. You're not being engaging if you're not preaching to what the congregation needs are. So you develop the plan and you look at, while you're developing the plan, what does the congregation need? You know, what do I need to relay to and allow God to help you in that, in prayer and deep study and deep meditation. So when you develop that plan, you have an idea of what you are going to write on throughout the year. And you know, whenever you're walking, you know, taking a dog out for a walk or whatever, you're out with the kids and you see some things that might relate to your lesson, write it down. Or, take your phone out. I do this. I have to have when I'm driving, I'm thinking about something, and just something comes to mind. I look at my wife and say, "Hey, can you grab my phone and pull up my notes? I need you to type something out for me." And she does it verbatim, and I love her for it. She's a help me for a reason.
No, that's right. The Notes app on my phone is like the best app ever to me.
Right.
And I write sermons in it.
Yeah.
I take notes in it at series like
man.
this. I put pictures in there.
He's not lying, y'all.
I'm not lying about this. I even put like the opening slide.
Oh man.
And the outline and all that.
Awesome.
I attach stuff in there. I've got hashtags.
That's amazing.
This is Apple Notes for me. I've got 1,200 notes in here.
Oh my goodness. I am nowhere near that.
But I love it. My speaking schedule's in here. Like back in the day, I used Evernote for this. I'm geeking out now. I'm sorry. Long-time listeners know I'll do this. And Evernote was just not. It was cost me money for one thing. I was having syncing issues. Apple Notes, it's free. It syncs. It's everywhere. Computer, iPad.
So
phone.
you mean I don't have to go far to find?
You don't have to go very far to
help?
be able to plan. No, you don't. You don't at all.
So we don't have to overthink this.
No.
Oh, wow.
No.
Wow.
Simple.
How about that?
You just need something simple.
Imagine that.
Develop a plan.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
Develop a plan. And then,
Yeah.
after you develop a plan,
Okay.
start early.
Oh. Okay.
Start early. So what I'm talking about is, and a lot of you
mean at 5 a.m. Saturday? Is that what you mean?
Oh, do you wish that? Right? Yeah, we're not talking any. No Saturday night specials, preachers.
No.
We're not advocating any Saturday night specials. What we're saying is, and it ties back to the first point. As you know, when you know about what you're going to preach on, it gives you the power to start your prep early. So. Yeah. Some of us, and I've heard you mention this on the podcast too, which I appreciate. After a long Sunday, you've done a Sunday morning Bible class, you preached the AM lesson, you preached the PM lesson, and on Monday you might just want to take a day off. And a lot of us do that, right? Yeah. And Tuesday you get right back to it. Yes. Well, hey, if I already know what I'm going to be preaching on the next week, on Tuesday I don't have to fumble around, in looking in the Bible on what text I want to preach on. Right?
You do that thing where you close your eyes and let your Bible fall open. Oh, it looks like I'm preaching Leviticus chapter 8.
Yeah, might as well put in my resume.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
No. You need to go ahead and have the plan so you can start early.
That's right.
So like I said, you're able to start early if you have that plan and you have already been noticing things in your area as leading up to this lesson that you can tie into. I can't tell you how many times when I go into a outline that I'm going to be preaching the next week, and I might have some things in there already based on some prior experiences, right?
Well, you never know when so to speak, inspiration is going to strike, right?
Exactly.
I mean, your father-in-law was talking a little earlier about cutting the grass. And how when he's cutting the grass, things are still churning. And it's amazing how sometimes I've had to pull the lawnmower over and get out my notes app.
Yeah. I appreciate you saying that. My wife is like, "Well, I appreciate you not hiring somebody to do our lawn." And I said, "It's really therapeutic for me because I'm out there and I can, like my father-in-law said, we can think about what our lessons are going to be, what we want to convey to the congregation, and even if it's on a Friday, the time is about to come where we're going to stand in front of the Lord's people. You're going through your sermon, it's marinating in your mind, and so that's great. And when you start early, you can do those things.
Right. Maybe be a little more creative in terms of your approach, things like that. Yeah, it's always better.
Yeah. And I can tell you, a lot of people in our congregations are smart. Right?
Oh, yeah.
There's some wide. So people are going to know if you are just shooting from the hip, if you have not done the prep, which leads to the third point.
Okay.
Be authentic in your writing.
Okay.
Be authentic in your writing. And I say that because, there can be a big urge to copy somebody else's style or copy somebody else's material without quoting them and things like that. And so going back to the other, when you start early, when you develop your plans, you can write your own things. Now, there is nothing wrong with quoting from great. We were just talking about Tom Holland before we went live, and how I mentioned his book Sermon Outline and Delivery. It changed my ministry, and I've used that thing ever since. it was introduced to me, right? And so there's nothing wrong with quoting from great brotherhood preachers like the Dan Winklers. Dan is a great writer. Dan Winkler, he's a good writer. Great writer. And there are others. Paul Sane, who's in the place.
He's around here somewhere.
Yeah, it was great seeing him. But so there's nothing wrong with quoting from those guys, but make it your own. Right. Make it your own, and people appreciate that if you're authentic.
People talk about writing in your own voice and stuff like that, and I mean it's going to take some time because naturally, it's like I think Dan Winkler's a great writer. I want to write like him.
Yeah.
And so it's like and but next thing I know, I'm not really speaking in my own voice.
Right.
When you're writing a sermon, or maybe in the early days when you were writing your manuscripts, do you try and write it as though you are speaking it? Mm-hmm. So in other words, that would be different than if you were writing like by the way our English teachers taught us to in high school and college.
No. I'm writing it in my own tone, right? Yeah. And so I got the y'alls in there. I've got the So I'm writing it as I'm because it's me, right? Yeah. I want to make it my own. And so the other thing about that is I'm not reading it verbatim.
Okay.
I go over it several times. Yeah. There are times if I have the time throughout the week. Now with 2 kids, it's not as easy, but I'm studying it. So that there are times where I go noteless. I don't have anything, and I appreciate that. I can really look eye to eye with people, more on an intimate and deeper level than it is than just having the notes.
That's what Hiram Kemp does. Yeah, he manuscripts, but it's noteless by the time he gets up there and delivers it.
He's like a genius. I don't know.
He is a genius. Yeah,
all the things.
Don't get us started on Hiram.
Glad y'all brought him back on the other.
Thank you.
Show.
Bring back Hiram. The campaign worked. He's now back on 4 Preachers. So thank you for your support.
Yes. Great podcast. The other 3 guys aren't as bad.
I know. Well, but we need Hiram to make it a good show.
Yes.
Any of us would say that.
Anyway, let's get back here.
Yeah.
Hiram, we talk about you enough.
I know. But we're writing in our own authentic voice. And so Hiram's a good example. Yeah, Hiram has a way of saying things. He has a mannerism. He just throws stuff out. It's hilarious.
Right.
I'm not Hiram, and I have to know that.
Exactly. Exactly. And I have a great illustration, I think. A great preacher friend of mine, he was we went out for sushi one day.
As one does.
And we were talking about a conversation that he had. This guy has master's degrees from Freed. I'm not going to say his name.
He's a smart dude.
Smart guy. He's been. He's an Army veteran. He's been around the mill. So he knows his stuff, right? And he had been preaching at this congregation for maybe about 2 or 3 years, and he uses he has a vernacular where he uses some big words and things like that.
Okay.
And so a member came to him one Sunday and said, "Hey, you might need to tone down the way that you're speaking to us, right? And just speak to us how a normal person." He was like, "I've been doing this for 3 years now. Do you understand how belittling that would be to the congregation if I just automatically change the way I preach?" Right? They were like, they would be like, "What is this guy doing? That's unauthentic." Right? He's being himself. Right. And so you gotta appreciate that.
Right.
Being authentic is really good. Some people, granted, they're not gonna like it, but hey, the one thing that I always come back to is, if God is pleased with what I am doing, then that's all that matters.
That's right.
Everything else is gravy.
Yeah, and we do everything we can to be all things to all men.
Right.
But at the same time, I can't be somebody I'm not. And that's what that is.
Exactly.
All right, we are talking about 9 things we can do, just practical tips to help improve our writing.
Yeah.
And we've had 3 so far. Let's see. We want to do some planning. We want to start early, and we want to be authentic. We want to be ourselves.
Yes. Here's number 4, and there's some people who may throw virtual bananas at me.
Whoa, virtual bananas.
But have another preacher or somebody you can confide in, look at your writing, review your writing. You know, I've reached out. I'm in the master's program at Freed, and I've reached out to several people who have already gone through the program. I said, hey, you know, at any point, can I just come to you throughout the semester and just ask you to look at my major paper or something like that? And they've happily agreed. You know, and you can do the same for sermons. I have people, fellow preachers who send me their sermon outlines, right? And that is great. As preachers, we should want to share information with each other. Polishing the Pulpit started more than 30 years ago with brothers you know, coming to these hallowed grounds in Cerebreville, Tennessee, and getting together and going over sermons, studying together, and things like that. And it just has blossomed to what it is today.
I think they were even sermon planning, by the way.
Exactly, right? And so having someone else who might be more knowledgeable, you know, put someone like that in your camp. You know, don't have people who are always willing to say, hey, you know, that sounded great. That, you know, you sounded awesome today. Well, you need to have some people who say, you know what, you could have done a little bit better, and that's okay, right? Just you know, make sure that you can have those people you can rely on.
That too, and sometimes like the Four Preachers group, you know, like we're just friends, you know, we just hang out. And we said we ought to do a podcast. We will often say, hey, I'm writing a sermon about this. We have a little text chain. I'm writing a sermon about this, and I'm thinking about going this direction. Do y'all think that's the most effective direction? And we'll all kind of throw that around. So whether we're evaluating the wording or even just the logic, you know, how is that flowing together just right? It's iron sharpens iron. It's just good to have those guys.
Exactly. And you just bring up a good point, man. We are not competing with each other.
No, not at all.
I think that can't be emphasized enough. Preaching is not a competition. You know, that guy Hiram, he did an article.
Doesn't he just make you sick?
Hiram, I love you.
We love you, Hiram. He'll never listen to this. It's fine.
But he wrote an article on First Century Faith Today. I'm talking about how preaching is not a competition. And I mean, it was a fantastic. I shared it with my elders. A fantastic article. And I think that if every preacher grasped that, we would be able to lock arms more than we are now, and be able to win souls, and like Robbie Eversole said one time, be able to storm hell with a water pistol together.
He has got away with words.
I know, right?
I love it.
But man, I'm telling you, preaching is not a competition. So going back to writing, hey, if I have somebody or several people that I can confide and say, hey, do you mind looking at this for me? You should care about what I'm saying to your fellow brother and sister. You know?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point.
You should care about that. You should care about how I'm relaying that. You should care about we be brethren.
You know?
So help me help you.
Yeah, that's right.
So
I love that. Okay, so we want to have... Whoa, sorry, I just hit a button. So we want to have people who can... I jumped to. That was funny. We want to have people who can help us out while we're going through this stuff. All right, what's number 5? Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. Read like your life depended on it. And I say that half jokingly, but as I mentioned in the introduction at the top, I have been able to grow my love for writing because of my love for reading. You know, and when you read, and I'm not just talking about reading the Bible. Of course, that's the number one thing that we should be reading. But you know, you can read different, you know, brotherhood books. You can read different, you know, genres. You know, whether it be I love drama. I love science fiction. You know. And so you're able to see how the different authors communicate things, and how they're able to make you know, words come to life, and you can see how that can translate into your own writing, into your own ministry. You know, and we're not trying to say, hey, make your words flowery. No, what I'm trying to say is, how can you expand your vocabulary? You know, how can you expand, you know, your sentence structure or your syntax or things like that? How can you you know, improve your grammar?
By
reading.
and broaden your horizons in every other way too.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, we deepen ourselves in certain concepts as well, just by digging in, maybe even from a different perspective. We may not always even agree with everything.
Absolutely.
But it's always a good thing to do.
You know, Dr. Burleson said, you read, Dr. Burleson said one time, you're reading these different things, you know, in our master's classes. Yeah. We read from different, you know, scholars, N.T. Wrights and, and others of the world, right? But it's like you take the meat and leave the bones.
That's right. Kind of deal, that's right.
Yeah. And if you're grounded enough, you know, hey, this doesn't sound right, but the writer's good, right? So I can take some of the stuff that he has said and used it, but I know that some other stuff I can just leave the bones on the table.
Yeah,
you know?
that's it.
Yep. So we've got a few more here.
Okay. Yeah. What's number? We ready for 6?
6.
Okay.
Leverage your weekly bulletin articles, and there are some of us who write weekly bulletin articles, and some may not. If you do not, maybe start one. This is also how you can improve your writing, and so what I'm getting at is take every chance that you can to write in order to improve. You got to do it, right? In order to improve it, right? And so take every chance to leverage your weekly bulletin articles. And what I do, since I do more of a manuscript style, I don't reinvent the wheel. Sometimes I just take snippets out of my sermon and just stick it into the article.
From the very same week or from weeks ago or what? How you doing that?
So I normally try to get the article in by Wednesday, Thursday morning at the latest, and I strive to have the sermon done by Wednesday evening. So normally, you know, by the time the sermon's ready, I could just go ahead and take some snippets out of the article. And if I already have in my mind what the sermon is going to be, you know, even if the sermon is not done, I just go ahead and write that article. And it's about, you know, 250 to 300 words, you know, and so it doesn't take long at all. If I already know what those main points are going to be for my sermon, I just write them out in the article and just expound on them a little bit and say, hey, see you on Sunday. You know, encourage people.
Well, that's cool. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, leverage the article.
Right.
So number 7. You mentioned this when we're talking about reading, reading different genres, reading other material. Stay informed of the current cultural trends, so your writing will be relevant, and your preaching will be relevant, right? And so there are a lot of things going on in our society, right? And we need to be able to be ready to speak about those things. You know, things that people are struggling with, things like that. And so if we are not reading, then we won't be able to understand and know and be knowledgeable enough to talk about these things when folks ask us about them.
Point.
You know, I don't want to be caught, you know, I don't want to be caught off guard. You know, if I am, I'll say, hey, let me read up on that, and I'll come to you later.
Don't give in to the other temptation, whereas you act like you know something about something you know nothing about. Don't do that.
You do more harm than good.
Yes.
And like I said before, you know, people are smart. They will pick up on those things.
Yeah.
You know, we have some wise apples in our congregation.
Yes, we do.
Wise owls, I should say. And this is the big one. And it ties into the AI piece.
Yeah.
Remember the AI, if you're using it in your sermon prep or your writing or whatever, it's a tool, not a crutch. It's a tool, not a crutch. Now, I fear that AI can be seen by people as something that can solve all of our sermon writing, work in just a click of a button. Just write a prompt. Hey, write an outline for me on John 3:16.
Yeah.
Get up on Sunday morning. Today we're going to talk about the love of the love of Jesus. And you get up there, it sounds nothing like you.
Right.
You know, because, AI generated for you. Luke Griffin, he taught a lesson at this year's inaugural Branson PTP using AI, artificial intelligence in ministry.
I'm generating an outline on John 3:16 as we speak. Look at this.
Literally.
Yeah, I've got 3 points.
seconds.
4 points now. It's literally coming out in front of me. The heart of the gospel, John 3:16.
How about that?
Opening illustration. Share a story or anecdote that highlights the idea of a profound love or sacrifice. Context. Briefly explain the context of John 3:16. Number 1, God's love for the world. Number 2, the gift of God's Son. Number 3, the promise of eternal life. Number 4, responding to God's love. And then you got summary, closing illustration, and a prayer.
How about that?
There you go.
Even the prayer.
Done.
Even the prayer.
It says, lead the congregation in a prayer of thanksgiving for God's love and a commitment to live in response to it.
Oh, my goodness.
Chat GPT right there.
Oh, wow. Wow. Drop the mic.
I'm done for this Sunday. No.
It is. And so that ties into what Luke was saying. And you did that in a matter of what? Seconds?
I don't know. You were talking, and I was just over here doing this.
Listen, my sermon is done. Dean is just rambling off, and my sermon is done for the week.
So I'm moving on. I heard, and I know you got a story about Luke, and I want to get.
Yeah, go ahead.
I heard. I had a college student. I asked the college student, "How do you use Chat GPT?" And he said, "Well, I use it to prompt my thinking." He said, "If I ever feel stuck, I'll ask ChatGPT, and it may generate 5 things, and I may take one of those, and I don't take the point, but I use that to jumpstart my thinking on something."
There you go.
And I thought, now that's a wise use of ChatGPT because sometimes, and I haven't looked through this sermon that I just generated. The points are okay. God's love is universal. God's love is sacrificial. God's love is transformational. But, these are things that sound good, but, what does it actually mean? You know, you still have to do some work for it.
Exactly.
But, that's just an illustration.
Plug some Bible verses in there. You're golden.
That's right.
But, no, I love the it jump starts my thinking notion because, that's what I leverage it for.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially when, I know none of y'all have been up late at night preparing sermons.
No,
but sometimes when you're up late and it's just hard to really get the mind to work. You're like, man, what am I trying to?
Sometimes you don't have a choice but to stay up. Even if it's Wednesday night late or Thursday night late. Sometimes you just have to do what you have to do.
Exactly. You're probably 3 cups of coffee in.
I know that's right.
And the idea still can't come to you, you know, and so it's good to use AI in that sense for it to just jumpstart. That's what I'm trying. I'll just use that. I'll just take a little snippet of this and that's okay. But what Luke said about AI, and let me just say here, I really appreciate how the directors here at Polishing the Pulpit have featured some lessons on AI and everyday Christians' use of it. It just goes to show that it's top of mind. AI is not going anywhere.
No, it's here to stay.
It is here to stay, right? And so I love how they are being relevant and bringing these topics to the forefront so that people won't be caught with their pants down, so to speak, and helping everyone appreciate this technology. So
we need to be prepared.
We do, absolutely. So Luke said, AI cannot and should not write your sermons for you. Just like you typed it up on prompt on Chat GPT.
I had it right there.
Right there. There it is. AI should not do that for you. Right. He said, it is possible, like you just did, to type in there, write me a sermon on Barnabas, and boy, you might get the best sermon on the great encourager of Barnabas than you ever seen in your life.
I wonder if ChatGPT knows who Barnabas is.
You see it.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah,
he said it'll spit it out in 10 seconds. So he's like, 1, 2. Look at that.
This is it.
Spit it out in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Now he says you can do that if you are a lazy preacher.
Here I am. No, I'm not. This is an experiment.
It is.
I'm not using this.
Amazing.
It's on 0.4 now.
It's
0.5. It's been maybe 20 seconds.
They go into the legacy of Barnabas.
Look at this.
That's amazing.
I got a whole outline right here.
That's amazing.
The life and legacy. And all I said was write a sermon on Barnabas. Now, so it's assuming who Barnabas is and all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A generous giver, an encourager, an advocate, a partner in ministry, a restorer of the fallen, the legacy of Barnabas.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And
Chat GPT.
And I guess, well, I'll be remiss to say that is the generative piece of AI, right? So you've got your
tell us what that means.
So the generative AI is all about, machine learning, right? Over time, it will learn from humans about different topics or different scenarios, illustration, whatever, and continue to improve on the information, right?
Yeah.
So the more information that you give it, the better it will be. Right, so that's why a lot of people are fearful, right?
Yeah,
because it's like, man, well, one day it could outsmart him. Well, let's not worry about that.
It relies on us for the content.
Exactly. So that's the generative piece of it. It's continuing to learn.
Yeah.
But continuing to what Luke said, he says, it's not good for you or for the congregation if you think that AI is going to do your work for you, and write your sermons. And I mention this because with the advent of AI, with this technology, it can be so easy for us to say, you know what? Oh, I don't need to write. Oh, my sermon prep.
Yeah,
done.
I'm good.
Don't. No, we should want to be better as God's preachers, as God's men, and do the work. Do the work of an evangelist. Do the work. Put the work in. And so AI can make our work better, but we should not rely on it as a crutch.
Yeah. Well, and the things we're studying need to pass through our hearts and become a part of who we are.
Absolutely.
And in that sense, they are ours. Paul talks about my gospel. Well, he's not saying his as opposed to another gospel. It's Paul who says there isn't another gospel.
Exactly.
But he says, this is what I do. This is who I am. I can claim this is mine.
Yeah.
And same is true for us as we preach this. I can't just, hey, this may or may not be a bad sermon on Barnabas. We would need to debate that, and look into what it's actually saying. But at the same time, what this hasn't done, while I do have an outline, I might could get up, and if I'm a good enough public speaker, I could probably go off the cuff with this. The problem with this isn't in my heart. Barnabas, I'm not. How can I encourage somebody to be like Barnabas when I'm not like Barnabas? This is an issue that
such a good point.
Yeah, so we've got
to
watch out for that.
Yeah, we mentioned Tom Holland before, and there's a quote that he mentioned in his book, Sermon Outline Delivery, that has stuck with me. Preachers have to be God's men.
Yes.
They have to be God's men. And what he means by that is, if you are not willing to be the person that God has called you to be, when you're getting up and you're delivering a sermon on Barnabas or the love of God, if you're not willing to be a great encourager, if you're not willing to show the love of Christ, then don't get up there and preach it.
Right.
It's got to be in you, like you said. Didn't Gatorade produce a commercial ad long ago? Is it in you?
Is it in you?
If it's not in you, then you should not have the conviction to preach it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have one more.
Okay.
We're at number 9. Number 9.
Mm-hmm.
Man, if I had a 9-point sermon, you know how many buildings I would be kicked out of?
Yo, get out of here with that. What are you doing? 9 points?
But this just ties it all in.
Yeah.
Remember that what we are doing, whether it's writing, whether it's preaching, whether it's visiting, anything that we're doing in ministry, but pertaining to this topic, how to improve our writing, remember that what we are doing is for the glory of God. And I think that since that's the notion, that what we're doing is for the glory of God, we should want to give him our best. Our congregations deserve our best. And when Paul said in 1 Corinthians 11:1, imitate me as I imitate Christ, what was he doing? He was imitating heaven's best. And so we should strive to do our best as we imitate heaven's best. Jesus was the greatest preacher the world has ever known. And so I I will never be half of the preacher that Jesus was, but I can try.
Right.
I can try. And where can that start? Well, in the heart, in my preparation, and that flows over into my writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do all that we can for the glory of God.
For the glory of God. That's really what it's about. And I need to ask myself, hey, if I'm getting all my stuff from ChatGPT or anywhere else, is this really glorifying God? Like, is this am I glorifying God in my body by doing this?
Yeah.
Some things to think through there.
Absolutely.
Wow. It is important to write, and writing it's not an antiquated art. It may be a lost art, but it's not antiquated. It's not out of date.
It is becoming more of the lost because of, I think, we've talked about the AI, but, you've got people who, the acronyms, the acronym use every day. We don't type out things as much anymore.
Yeah. LOL,
LOL,
stuff.
and
right.
I mean, it's interesting. It's funny. I'm trying to keep up. I'm like, what? I may see an acronym from someone. I'm like, what do you mean by that?
I know. Sometimes I Google them. It's just dangerous. What is this acronym?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But we can improve our writing by just taking these small steps. You don't have to take all the steps. I'll use all the tips here, but just making small improvements every day to be better preachers. And that's what Preachers in Training is all about, right?
That's right.
Just being better at what we do as God's preachers.
Yeah. I've been at this for 11 years, and it turns out I need a lot of training. I think that's what this means.
Man, well, they say, man, the day you stop learning is the day you die.
Okay, that makes me feel better. Yeah. I'm going to keep doing this podcast now.
Do it.
Dean Thompson is at the University Church of Christ in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I know that they'd be happy to have you anytime you want to stop in and say hello.
Come on down.
Yeah, come on down. And
see
you hear some good preaching, and it's all good stuff.
Yes.
We appreciate you, man.
We love to be encouraged by you and appreciate you, man.
Yeah, thank you for being a part of this.
Great seeing you. Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity again.
Oh, thanks for sharing what you did. And thank you for being a part of this edition of Preachers in Training. Reminder that Preachers in Training releases every Thursday from thelightnetwork.tv and our podcast partners. You can also find us on YouTube and hit the subscribe button on any of those so that you never miss an episode. It's going to do it for this edition. Until next time, let's go preach the word.